So now the question is, what do we do with this? Well, first of all, if you're not happy with some area of your life, good, right? Good. This is how we're going to make the shift in your life. This is what this whole program's about. Being honest with yourself that there's some place in your life, there's a gap between where you are and where you really want to be. And so we're going to help you close that gap. And the first step is to get honest with yourself, to tell yourself the truth, not make it worse than it is, but say, here's how it really is. That's how we start to improve. Then what we're going to do is get clear about what you really want, get a vision. And then we're going to work on the strategies to close that gap and make what you're visioning real. That's the process we're going to go through. Now, by the way, if you're not happy with an area of your life, we could call that unhappiness, we could call that dissatisfaction, or at a simple level, we call it some level of pain. Whenever we feel dissatisfied, unhappy, or a sense of pain, we really have three choices. And I don't just mean the choice of what to focus on, that's true, and what things mean and do, but let me kind of reframe it for you in a different way. The first choice people have when things aren't the way they want is to blame someone. Why are my finances not where I want them to be? Why is my body not where I want it to be? Why is my relationship not where I want it to be? And the most natural, and I say natural, I should say habitual, what the most people do when they're in this place of stress and they're overwhelmed is they look for something to blame. And there are three things you can blame. A, an event. The best thing about blaming an event, this thing that happened, I had this car accident years ago and I lost my momentum and I haven't worked on my body since. Or, man, I did have some money saved, but then, I had to take care of my mom, or, I put it in the stock market and remember when it went up and it went down, or I bought some real estate and that was the right answer. And oh my gosh, look what happened. And you got a story. And the story may be absolutely accurate. I'm not saying it's not true. I'm just saying blame will never empower you because it gives you no power. It reinforces this idea that the outside world controls you. And the outside world has massive influence. But again, there's two worlds we can master, the inner world and the outer world. Though if you're going to master the outside world, we got to master the inside first. So blaming an event is convenient because an event's not going to interrupt you and say, excuse me, nope, I'm not the source. It's not going to happen. So you get to preserve your sense of identity. What's another thing you could blame besides some event? Ideally one from the past where no one is here to represent it. You can blame someone else. Well, how could I possibly have a great relationship being with him, being with her? He or she's impossible. Look at them. They're so selfish. All they do is think about themselves. I hear this all the time in people in their relationships. And you know what? Their partner may be selfish, may be totally true and accurate as a story. But as long as you give that the reason why your life is not where you want it to be, very little is going to change except maybe you leaving that relationship. And then pretty soon you'll end up with the same problems with somebody else, most likely. Not always. Some people are made to be together, some not. I'm not denying that. I've certainly experienced that in my own life. But you got to start with not blaming someone else if you're going to get where you want to go. We all do it. I've done it plenty of times. Don't get me wrong. But what I'm suggesting to you is if you're going to empower yourself, blame is still not the answer because it'll disempower you. And what's the third source you can blame? By the way, blaming someone who's not here is best of all because they won't interrupt you and say, no, it's your fault. So it's very convenient and give you a nice comfort in the moment that there's nothing wrong with me. It's just this other person, whether it be your boss or, your partner or whoever it may be, your children. But the third choice you got is to blame yourself. And most people think of this as being responsible. And I'm here to tell you, having worked with 3.5 million people, blaming yourself will not make it better. And I don't mean don't be responsible. When you're blaming yourself, you're not being responsible. You're beating yourself up. When you're responsible, you're saying, oh my gosh, here's a pattern that I've got to change. This isn't me. This is a pattern that I've been running. I got to shift this pattern to focus or meaning or action. I got to shift what goes on in this area and I can make a change in this life. But as long as you're beating yourself up, you're blaming yourself, woe is me, or I'm no good, or I'm not good enough, or I'm not strong enough, you're not going to see a change. Does that make sense? Blame is something we all do at times, but the quicker you can get out of it, the faster you'll be empowered. So I look at blame as one of three choices, but it's a choice that really doesn't give you anything. What's the second choice? A real choice. Well, if you don't like how your business is, if you don't like your finances, if you don't like your body, if you don't like your relationship, change it. That's what you got to do. Change it. Change your life conditions. You'll never do that as long as you're blaming someone else. What do you got to do? Put on your shoes and start walking. Take some action. Find a role model of someone who's already done it. Get focused not just on I need to lose weight or I need to get stronger, healthier, or I need to make more money. Get focused on what you want and be specific. Hey, I want this kind of energy. I want to be able to run like the wind. I want the energy when I come home and say, honey, I'm home. She feels it or he feels it. It creates a state change in my partnership, Or, I want, this kind of physical strength. I want to be shaped like this. And you be real specific. I want to lose 23 pounds, not I want to lose some weight. Because you may be focused, but you're not being clear. Now, let me give an example that would illustrate not only the power to get people to tap their resources at a different level, but really the power of state and shifting blueprint. And the example I want to give you is related from sports, but you could relate this to your own life. You could relate this to if you're in a position of leadership. Listen, if you're a business person, you've got to get people to maximize their ability, don't you? You got to get them when they're in a down state and turn them around, and not just for the moment. You got to get them to sustain their success, change that focus, change what this challenge means, change what they're doing so they get the victory in life. Got to do the same things for your kids, don't you? What is a good parent? It's a good leader. You got to be help your kids find a different focus when it's not working out, when they feel like, it's all coming apart or they're not enough. You got to be able to do the same thing, get them to come up with a better meaning, take action. Sometimes you got to do this to yourself. And if you're going to lead, you got to start by leading yourself, not other people. So let me give you a good example. You may have seen my silly infomercials over the years, and you may have noticed that Coach Pat Riley, one of the greatest coaches in NBA history, is in those shows and often gives testimony to the impact of my work. And Pat's a dear friend of mine. I met him in the early 1990s, but he actually started reading my books and listening to my tapes back in the 80s. In fact, he's given me enormous credit for the impact he had back in the days when he was with 4 championship teams, the Los Angeles Lakers. I could share so many stories about Pat because he's such an extraordinary human being. But let me just give you an example that you may recall that's got some recency to it. You may recall that Pat had joined the Miami Heat. When he took the team over, it was a team that had never won a national championship, and they were really broken. And he loved the idea of this challenge. Well, by 2006, Pat was 61 years old, and he had not won a national championship in 17 years. What a gift. At that stage of your life, to be back in the competition, to be the best in the world, the best of anyone who exists in the NBA. But here he finds himself having an opportunity to fight in one of those championships. And by the second game of the series, he'd already lost 2 games. His men were feeling defeated. Listen, there's only been 2 teams prior to Pat Riley that have ever come back having lost the first 2 games and won the NBA championship. 2 in history. So everyone, of course, in the press is talking about this. In the interviews, they're talking about this after the game. And you could just take one look at the states of these men, these players, and you'd say, oh my God, they just lost 2 in Dallas. They're going back to Miami. There's no way they're going to turn this around. So what did Pat do? He recognized the truth. What he had to do is make some changes in his own state. He had to be able to find a sense of absolute certainty within himself before he could transfer it to the people he wanted to touch. And by the way, it's the same thing that all of us have to do. If you're going to lead, you can't give something you haven't done to yourself. You can't take somebody to a place that you're not yet in. How he did that, we'll talk about on tomorrow's audio. But once he had that state of certainty, and he was tapping into a blueprint that says there's always a way. There's always a way to victory. Even though you're down by 0-2, even though only 2 teams in history have done it, there is a way. He then began to work on a plan. And here was his plan. The day after that second loss, when the team spirit was about as low as it could possibly be, he didn't go in to motivate these men. He wanted to inspire them. And by the way, you'll hear me say this a lot of times. I don't believe in motivation. Motivation's like a warm bath, but we all need inspiration. And what's the difference? Someone trying to get you going versus someone triggering something that already exists inside you. Inside all of us, there's the ability to overcome. He had to find a way to raise their spirits so in that state of mind, they could find their real abilities, their real resources. So he tells them the day after the game, when their spirits are as low as they can imagine, he says, look, guys, we're going to be playing for the national championship 12 days from today on June 20th in Dallas in Game 6. Now, guys looked at him like, come on. We just lost 2 in a row. Only 2 teams ever come back from in history. Some talked about it later. Some were thinking in their minds at the time, as Pat shared this story with me later. He said, you could just look in their eyes and see total disbelief. He said, now I know what you're thinking. Many of you looking at me like, oh, this is some kind of pump up. There's no way in hell. Only 2 teams in history have ever come back from losing the first 2 games to win, and we aren't playing well. We seem to be outmatched by these guys. There's no way we're going to go and win 3 games in a row here in Miami and then go back to Dallas and beat them. We haven't won a game in Dallas for 4 years. At that stage, the Heat had not won 1 game in Dallas. Hear me, in 4 years. much less in the championship after they'd been behind. And he just looked them in the eye and he said, feel me and feel yourselves. He said, there is no doubt, there is zero doubt in my mind that all the hardships, all the work, all that we put in this entire season is going to come to fruition. And that night, when we finally have the chance to taste victory, all the deprivation, all that we've endured is going to take us to the point where we will take that victory. Well, if you remember history, you know what occurred. They came back and they won in Miami the next game and the next 3 games in a row. Now they're flying back to Dallas to play the Mavericks on their home court where they have an incredible record and where Miami has the worst record against them for 4 years. But before he left, he called another team meeting the morning before they're supposed to fly to Dallas. And he said, remember what I said to you after you lost the second game? We've won 3 in a row. No one in the world thought we were going to do this. We're 1 victory away. And many of you are thinking we got 2 games to do it in. And he said, and you're wrong. We're going to do it in 1 game. It's real simple, gentlemen. We're going to walk into this place with a level of certainty where we own that victory right now before we even get on the plane, and we're going to carry it through the game no matter what hardships we face, and we are going to walk out victorious and champions. And he said the way we're going to do it is real simple. Pack only 1 set of clothes for Game 6 because there isn't going to be a Game 7. He said, I'm not booking any hotels. We're booking 1 hotel night, 1 evening. And as you can guess, there are not going to be any of the hotels in Dallas with that game going on. Everybody's flying in to see it. We're booking 1 night. We're bringing 1 suit to wear because I want to tell you something. We're going to come back that night to Miami for our victory celebration. There's no doubt in my mind, just like there was no doubt in my mind when I talked to you after the second game. We're going to come back having won that game. So sure enough, to a man, they packed only 1 outfit. They booked only 1 evening, and they flew into the Lions Den, into Dallas, to go play the 6th game. And if you read the press, or if you talk to your friends, if you're an NBA fan, I'm sure you can remember very few people thought that they could possibly win a 4th game in a row and take the championship in Game 6 in Dallas's hometown. But Pat knew there was one more thing to be done. He needed to make sure the players were in state from an emotional gut level, inspired right before the game. I had the chance to fly to Dallas, and I was so excited to see what they could do. And, Pat let me know they were going to absolutely win before the game, and I was going to have a chance to witness it. But here's what he said to the team. He walked in, and it was silent. Everyone looked in each other's eyes, paused, waiting to hear what Pat would say before the most important game of their life. He looked around and said, gentlemen, does April 4th, 1968 mean anything to you? And of the 15 players, 14 were African-American at the time. So some of the older players looked at him kind of knowingly and nodded their heads, but some of the younger players looked at him with kind of a blank expression on their face. And Pat said, that was the day that Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated in Memphis, Tennessee. The day before that assassination, he was speaking to a striking Memphis sanitation workers. Now, I'm not trying to trivialize the work of one of the greatest American leaders we've ever had by trying to compare him with what we're trying to accomplish here in some sporting contest. He said, but I want you to understand there are some parallels. He said, for what Dr. King said is this. And let me just read you what he read, the famous words of Dr. King. I know I won't do them justice with my voice, but think about sitting in that room right before the game where everything's on the line, and you're hearing these words. Oh, like anybody, I'd like to live a long life. Longevity has its place, but I'm not concerned with that now. I just want to do God's will. And he's allowed me to go to the mountain, and I have looked over, and I have seen the promised land. We have suffered greatly. We've been through so many deprivations, but I have seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will go to the promised land. And I am happy tonight. I am not worried about anything. I am not fearing any man. My eyes have seen the glory, and it is ours. And with that, Pat turned, walked out of the locker room, and led his men onto the floor into battle. And the game began. And a group of men walked on that court that were very different than just 9 days before when they'd lost that second game. A group of men that had found the resources inside of themselves to triumph. They didn't play perfectly. There were all kinds of ups and downs in the end. But in the final seconds when that buzzer went and these men were facing the greatest challenge of their life, they won by 3 points. And they walked off champions for the first time in their lives. And for Pat Riley, a true leader, an amazing coach, for the 5th time as a leader. And I tell you this story because it inspires me. I mean, here's a man I'm trying to coach. He teaches me all the time. Isn't that true of all of our lives? All he did was find a way at different stages to get these men to enter a state of their true ability, to give up the blueprint of failure and to step into the blueprint that there is always a way. How useful is that blueprint for all of us? How useful could it be in your life? No matter how successful we are going to face challenges in our life, and it's going to be our capacity to find the state within us, to find those beliefs within us that'll inspire us. And in the coming days, we're going to come at it from many different ways, from humor, from real strategies that are proven. And we're going to just do a little bit each day until you get the momentum that takes you, if you're already successful, through the championship and beyond, the consistency of being your best all the time. Or if you're facing a challenging time where you feel like you're 0-2, it's going to be the victory that brings you those 4 victories in a row and that redefines your own identity of who you are and how you show up. That's the promise of the ultimate edge. What is the ultimate edge in life? Emotional fitness, psychological strength, the mental edge, the focus, the strategies and tools, and the alignment within yourself. That's what we're going to focus on each day, not just inspiration, but strategy as we work together to make sure we maximize who you are, what you're capable of, and what you get to enjoy out of this life. And that's where I want to kind of end here in terms of our final exercise. What I want you to think about as you leave, and what we're going to do each day so you know, is you'll listen to a session like this. Hopefully it'll stimulate you. It'll get you asking questions. It'll give you some tools, some strategies. But the proof is in the pudding. It's where the rubber meets the road, to use 2 overused metaphors. But it's true. The rubber meets the road with action. So at the end of each session, I'm going to ask you to do something. It might take you 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes so you get momentum. On some days, it'll be a strategy I want you to implement. Maybe something on your finances, might be around your body. On other days, it's going to be something that makes you shift psychologically in your state or in your blueprint. Today, since this is the introduction, I know this has been a tall drink of water, but I hope it's been stimulating for you, and we're going to go into the mechanics tomorrow. But what I really want to do today is first have you just look at, for 2, 3, 4 minutes, stop, stretch your body out, and I want you to write a paragraph or 2 to answer this question. What would your life be like if it was exactly the way you want it to be today? In other words, I want you to start with the ultimate end in mind. We all know we need to think about what we want, not what we don't want. We have to focus our minds. But I want to make it rich. It doesn't have to be perfect. The words don't have to be magical or something. I want you to describe for yourself. Like, if life was the way I ultimately want it to be, if my life was extraordinary, life on my terms, what would that look like? What would I change? What would I enhance? What would I spend more time with? What would I appreciate more? What would I do? And I want you to just take a little time to jot that down and kind of get a paragraph or 2 that you can read that you go, yeah, that's the essence. Because that is what we're going for. Yes, we'll make the individual changes around, finances or body or money or whatever it is, relationships, etc. But what we want to get clear is what's the ultimate you're after. And we're going to make sure we keep moving you towards that. And if you're wondering, how are we going to do that in a week or 2? We're going to do it by a little action each day. Input, information, education, some tools, some inspiration, but most importantly, something you're going to do. And each day we'll build on the day before, and pretty soon you'll get this momentum. We all know, the hardest part of working out is getting to the gym, right? And once you get started, you get in the flow. The same thing is true here. So my only request to you is show up. I'll be here with plenty of energy, ready to rock and roll with you. I can promise you that. I'm here to serve you. But none of this coaching is going to do any good if you're not here with me. So if you miss a day, get right back on it. Don't beat yourself up. Just rejoin me and let's rock and roll together. And tomorrow, by the way, tomorrow's first session is not about philosophy and inspiration. Tomorrow is that first introductory day of the Hour of Power. Think of it as our first real session, and it's on mechanics. It's on strategy. Tomorrow, I'm going to share with you exactly what I did to change my life years ago, and I still use it to this day, and I've taught millions of people to do it. I'm going to show you exactly what Pat Riley did to come up with that strategy that changed his life and changed the entire team. I'll tell you precisely what he did. He's my dear friend. He can verify it for you. It's these simple, physical, emotional, and focused steps. So that's what tomorrow's session is about. So hey, I hope this has inspired you. I hope this maybe at times has triggered you to think. I know my style and approach in this session has been really fast and strong and passionate. I know I'm a special bus, But you probably figured out there's no script here, baby. This is just me showing up saying, okay, if you were my dearest friend and I'm taking everything I've learned to help you move to the next level, even if you're better than I am, this is what I know. Here's what we do in our first session. And that's what I really wanted to create here for you. So thank you. It is a privilege and a blessing to be able to start this relationship with you and to start working on coaching and taking things to the next level. Now, by the way, we've covered so much territory, and honestly, my ideal would not be just to be having an audio conversation with you. I create these programs so we can reach millions of people because it's so darn easy and convenient. I mean, you don't have to go anyplace or do anything. It's, at your fingertips. You could do it 24/7, 365, anytime you want, using that net time, no extra time. But if you ask me, Tony, okay, I really want to take things to the next level. I want to transform things at a higher level right now, my body or my emotions, my finances, relationships, whatever. And you said, what's the best way to do it? The answer is total immersion. Just remember, I've created these events where literally in a couple days, in a weekend, you're able to go from where you are to where you want to be because we cover everything and we do it while you're in state. And you have the power of being in that group dynamic and me being able to individually work with you and other people right there in front of you. So immersion events are my favorite thing. They'll get you the fastest result. The follow-up to that ideally is one-on-one coaching. Again, convenient. You can do it anytime you want from wherever you are in the world because it's all done by phone and it's on your schedule. And it's brief and it's easy, and we're talking 20, 30, 45 minutes, an hour max, depending upon what you want to need, once, twice, 3 times a month, again, depending upon your needs. And then finally, the reinforcement of repetition. Thanks again for your time. This has been a privilege to serve you. I'll look forward to our next session together. God bless and live with passion.